Okay, we are streaming, so we're in good shape. Alex, do you have the agenda in front of you, or I can share it?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, we are streaming, so we're in good shape.
No, I've got it. We're still waiting for Jason, sounds like. Roberts?
Is he in the room with you, Krista, or is he joining from his office?
From his office.
Okay.
He walked in a few minutes ago.
So we can do welcome and minutes, and then we'll get to the finance stuff if you wanted to start the meeting.
Okay. And then do we also, before that, do we have legal counsel? Somebody?
Well, we're in
Functioning
process
that role
of
as
hiring legal counsel. That's
Okay.
an opening we have. We didn't used to have general counsel in-house, but we had Josh leave us, unfortunately, for another job, and so that's something we're in the process of filling.
Okay, I was aware that. I just wondered if we had anybody for today, but I'm sure we can navigate it. Okay, well, very good. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for taking time out of your schedule to join this morning in this important meeting, and hope you're all well, and your families, and also in your occupations and other interests that you might have. Hopefully some hobbies and something fun. So we have a lengthy agenda, but I think we can move through it pretty quickly this morning. The first item for approval is a set of minutes from April 11th, 2022. We have to entertain a motion to modify or approve those as appropriate from someone.
Alex, I would make that motion. This is Jamie.
Okay, thank you, Jamie. I have a motion from Jamie to approve the minutes. Is there a second?
I'll second that. Jason Sands.
Okay, Jason, thank you. All in favor of approving the minutes as presented for the late April 11th, 2022 meeting, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Okay, thank you. The next item is a public hearing, or actually two public hearings. One having to do with the allowing public comments regarding the fiscal year 2023 budget that's proposed, and a second hearing or a second topic to be discussed during the hearing regarding amendments to the current fiscal year, the fiscal year 2022 budget for UIA. So I'll be happy to entertain a motion to go into a public hearing to discuss those two items.
This is Nicole. I'll make that motion.
Okay, thank you, Nicole. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you, Brenda. Let's do a roll call vote on this. So Nicole,
Yes.
Jamie,
Yes.
Brenda,
Yes.
Brant,
Yes.
Jason Stan,
Yes.
Matt,
Yes.
and Leighton is an aye. Have I missed anybody that's on? It's a voting member.
Did you get Jason Sant?
Yes, I think I did. I meant to. Did I get you, Jason?
Yeah, you did.
Oh, Derek?
Derek,
Oh, you're
right here.
okay.
Derek's an aye from Reagan.
Okay, thank you, Derek. Okay, that appears to be unanimous. So thank you. We're now in a public hearing to take comments regarding the proposed fiscal year 2023 budget for UIA. I guess I should have had, apologize, Jason, I should have had you make a presentation. Let's go ahead and do that now, and then we'll open it for public comment.
Right. Thanks, Alex. Let me share my screen really quickly here. Okay, has everybody seen this with the UIA budget? Okay. Oh, there we go. Okay. This is the UIA fiscal year 2022 budget actuals. If you look at it, revenues, we're projecting that revenues will exceed estimates by $2.3 million for the year. A significant portion of that increase was due to commercial transport and an increase in business revenue we're seeing there. Success with UETN was a major factor in that. We have seen a lot of business come in to UIA from UETN over the past year. Monthly UETN billings are about 140,000 per month, up from 78,000 per month in the prior year. Proceeds from debt issuance will be about $68.5 million. UIA issued a bond for Syracuse in September of 2021, and bonds for Santa Clara, Cedar Hills, and UIA were sold during the last couple of months. So those were all issued. Construction has kept pace with fiscal year 2022 levels, and we anticipate adding $58 million to our infrastructure in fiscal year 2022. This includes completion of the original Utopia and UIA footprints for the Utopia cities. So that's a major milestone for everything we're seeing. And by the way, if anybody has any questions as I'm going through this, feel free to ask. UIA operating revenues. This chart here shows fiscal year 21 actuals, estimated year end for fiscal year 2022, and then the proposed budget for 2023. The proposed budget for 23 shows an increase of 5.5 million over what was projected for fiscal year 2022, where we think we're going to end the year. This is based on an average net new connections of 500 per month and continuation of business sales growth, including UETN. UIA operating expenses. Proposed operating expenses exceeded 2022 budgeted projected expenses by about 23 operating expenses we project to proceed to exceed expenses for 2022 by about 6.2 million. The next couple of slides will explain why we will see this increase. A lot of it's due to management fees to Utopia and service contract fees that will be paid to Utopia. So the major portion of the increases we're going to see are increases in expenses going from UIA to Utopia for the services Utopia has provided. Another thing that is a big difference is the proposed distribution to UIA cities. This is increasing by $2.3 million over fiscal year 2022. As we mentioned in the preliminary budget, we do have a much larger distribution going to UIA cities than we've seen in the past, to UIA and Utopia cities. If you look at the management fee for Utopia, the management fees in place to allocate Utopia administrative expenses that are not captured by the service contract between UIA and Utopia. As UIA grows, the administrative functions of Utopia are increasingly allocable to UIA activity. And because most of the system revenue is earned at UIA, a reasonable portion of that revenue needs to be paid to Utopia to cover these costs. Analysis indicates the appropriate amount for fiscal year 2023 is $3.3 million. This is a 22% increase over fiscal year 2022. There is a service contract between UIA and Utopia, and the service contract intends to capture the costs directly associated with address passed, active subscriber connections, new connections which are managed by Utopia. The original service contract was adopted in 2010, and fees were not increased until 2019. We have adjusted those fees annually since that time, and fee increases require an amendment to the original agreement, which will be proposed later on in this meeting, along with the adoption of the final budget in June. UIA network expansion. We haven't budgeted for any additional bond issuances in fiscal year 2023. We will bring those into the budget as they are issued if we have new city partnerships come into play. We don't anticipate another UIA general bond. We have budgeted for $45 million of network expansion for fiscal year 2023, leaving open the possibility of using UIA cash reserves for funding if necessary. Funding for the completion of Syracuse and Pleasant Grove, along with first-year construction for Santa Clara and Cedar Hills, will be taken from construction funds currently held by our bond trustee. So a lot of the work we're doing next year will be from bonds that were issued in the prior year. As I mentioned earlier, we are proposing an increase in the distribution to cities from UIA. If you look over at this chart, the first chart shows the last column there on the right shows the distribution for fiscal year 2022 that was given to cities. If you look at the second chart on the right, that shows the distribution that's proposed for fiscal year 2023. Obviously, a major increase, about 2.5 times what you saw last year, is what we're proposing to go to the cities. In summary, the increase in fund balance approved over estimates for fiscal year 2022 is about $989,000 you see there. We had budgeted for an increase of $800,000. We have to budget for our fund balance to decrease every year. We will be exceeding what was in the budget for that decrease. The fiscal year 2023 budget shows a similar increase in fund balance. If we look at that, hold on, I accidentally moved the slide. There we go. Did I go the right way? Wrong way. There we go. So we're showing a net increase in fund balance of 2.6 million is what's projected for fiscal year 2022. If that's what was in the budget, if you look at the estimated, it's actually $5.9 million. We're going to have an estimated increase in fund balance. 2023 will be similar in about $5.1 million, if that's more clear. And that's all I had. Does anybody have any questions?
Thank you, Jason. Are there any, as Jason indicated, are there any questions from any of the board members at this point in time with regard to the proposed budget for fiscal year 22-23?
Just a quick question. There was a $500,000, what is non-network expansion line. What is that for?
Let me see if I can find that really quickly. Was that in my presentation or was that on the budget?
That was on the budget.
Okay.
It was under the expenses on page 1 of your budget. And I'm just curious of what you're doing non-network related.
I do have that. Let me find that really quick. Non-network expansion on page, I have to go to a different folder here really quickly, but I do have that.
Alex, while we're waiting for that, we do not have anybody from the public here at the office, and I did not receive any comments to be added to the public record. We have Matt Dahl joining us in the conference room, but no public.
Okay, thank you.
And Jason, is that for IP address acquisition? Is that, I'm trying to think of what that might be where it's not the network. It could be that maybe that's in the other category though.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I am looking really quick. I do have this. I just don't know if I have it. I'm still learning where files are located is part of the issue of what I'm going through here. But I thought I had it ready. Let's see here.
Welcome to being the new finance director.
Yeah, thank you. Here, I got it. I think this one's it. It is. Okay, non-network expansion. You know what, that would be for the acquisition. Roger, would you explain that? It is what you just said with the acquisition of the new lines.
Yeah. So IP addresses, they're not available anymore. So the way to get IP addresses is to acquire them through a transfer. And this is IPv4. The whole world hopes that we get to IPv6, where there's an almost infinite amount of IP addresses. But when they planned out IP addressing for the internet, they didn't expect, the billions of devices on the network. It wasn't designed for that. And so you have IPv4, which is a limited resource. And every year the price of buying and transferring IP addresses goes up on a per IP address basis. We have done this in the past, but we keep growing. Most of the customers on our network do get an IP address from their service provider, but there's a lot of situations where we use IP addresses, whether it's for our cities. Our cities can get service from us directly, and then that comes with our IP space. We do offer IP space on a wholesale basis too, several of our service providers. So anyways, there's always a kind of a growing need as we use IP addresses that we have to get some more. So that's what that is. That we're hoping that'll last us a couple more years. They are an asset, probably an appreciating asset that it's more valuable over time. That's the way it's been historically, but that's what that's for. So
Yeah.
That helps. I saw
Thank
that line
you.
item. I'm like, that's about the cost we're expecting to pay for us. So it makes sense that it's in there.
Thank you for that question, Brenda. That was good. Any other questions from any of the board members about the proposed fiscal year 23 budget? Okay, if not, Krista, can you confirm there's been no public input received?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Very good. Let's, I think we're able to, barring legal counsel, Nicole could help us if I get out of line here, but why don't we go ahead and have the presentation on the amendments to the current year budget, fiscal year 2022, and maybe we can act on those together or close the public hearing on both those items at the appropriate time. That'd be okay? Okay, so Jason, go ahead with your presentation on the amendments to fiscal year 2022 budget.
Okay. This one's going to be much quicker. If we look at the final fiscal year 2022 budgets, what's shown here on your screen versus where we project in the year. Revenues are projected to come in slightly lower than what the original budget was. But if you look at residential transport revenues, they're well above budget. If you look at commercial transport revenues, they're well above budget. Fiber lease revenues, they're just a little bit above budget. We had a big line for capitalized interest reserves, a contribution from those to come into Utopia. I think because we issued some of the bonds later than we had anticipated issuing them in the year, we are not projecting that we will see that contribution from the capitalized interest reserves this year. But other revenue growth is still very, very healthy and still progressing as we would have expected. Additionally, if we look at total operating expenses, they're projected to come in about $3 million less than was projected for the year. And if you'll notice, most of that comes in from debt service costs not being as high as we had anticipated. Once again, that's because bonds were issued later in the year than we originally projected in our original projections. We do have some lines that are, one line that will be slightly over, and that's network operating costs to Utopia. Those network operating costs are based on numbers of addresses that are being serviced by number of UIA addresses that are being serviced by Utopia. So when we see an increase in revenue for residential and commercial transport, we do expect that increase to come in for network operating costs that will go to Utopia. So that's reasonable and what would be expected. We don't need a budget for any of that because our budget, we are coming in under budget if for expenses and slightly for revenue on both of these. So we're not proposing an adjustment there. Where we are proposing adjustment is on the capital side. We had not budgeted for the issuance of the Syracuse, Santa Clara, Cedar Hills, and UIA bonds during the year. We are asking to budget for the issuance of those bonds, and that's basically what the budget amendment will be for. That's all I have. Do we have any questions there?
Thank you, Jason. Again, repeat any questions from the board of Jason regarding the proposed amendments to the current year budget. Okay, very good. Do we have any, Krista, any citizen comments or information from anyone outside of the organization?
No, I
regarding
have
the
not received
proposed
it.
amendments?
No.
Okay. Very good.
And I've got the stream up and there's no comments on there too, just to clarify that.
Okay.
Public could be putting comments there, but nothing there.
Okay, very good, Roger. Thank you. Well, I believe hearing no additional questions from members of the board or from members of the public, I think we're in a position to close the public hearing. So be happy to entertain a motion.
I move that we close the public hearing. This is Matt.
Okay, Matt, thank you. Is there a second?
Second, this is Brent.
Thank you, Brant. Let's do a roll call again. Nicole,
Yes.
Brant,
Yes.
Jason Sant,
Yes.
Brenda,
Yes.
Derek,
Yes.
Matt,
Yes.
Jamie,
Yes.
and I'm an I as well. So very good. Well, thank you for your questions. I think that's the only action item we have to take with regard to the public hearing. There's no additional resolution or what have you. So that allows us to move on to item 4, which actually is a consideration of the resolution 2205, that actually approves the annual budget for fiscal year 2023. So Jason, do you have anything in addition to what you've already presented regarding that proposed budget?
No.
Okay, are there any, before asking for a vote, are there any questions from members of the board regarding?
Not a question, but I do have a comment, Matt. I just wanted to say that while sorry, I'm in the room and I've got I just wanted to say that clearly when we're looking at these budgets, the service to our customers is paramount, as well as the health of the organization. But that being said, the increase in distribution to the member cities is an important component of this budget. And I just want to say that I appreciate that that change was made and look forward to seeing how we can further adjust that in the future, increase that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. And I can confirm, at least from my perspective, that that is the desire of the board, I think both Utopia and UIA, and has been for some time. And we're appreciative that we're here at the point where those payments can be escalated, and hopefully that will continue in the future. That's certainly the desire, I think, of all of us. So it is very good news, as Jason talked about, to be in this position. So a lot of hard work, a lot of effort, a lot of great support on the part of you as members of the board and your communities. So it's good. Any other questions? Okay. So let's do a roll call vote. Unless I missed something. Nicole?
Yes.
We haven't
Grant?
made a motion. Wait,
Oh, we did. Did I miss that?
yeah, we didn't
Okay,
actually
I
make a
apologize.
motion.
I'll make,
Yes, we do.
this is Nicole. I'll make a motion that we approve the resolution approving the budget as set forth.
Okay, thank you, Nicole. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second from Derek. Thank you, Derek. Let's do a roll call vote now. Nicole?
Yes.
Grant?
Yes.
Brenda?
Yes.
Jason Sant?
Yes.
Derek?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
Jamie?
Yes.
And I'm an I as well. Okay, very good. Thank you very much. Next item is a resolution 2206 approving as proposed the amendments to the current year budget, fiscal year 2022. Are there any questions regarding those proposed amendments? Okay, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve resolution 2206.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, thank you, Derek. Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, Jason
Jason.
Sant. Thank you, Jason. Let's do a roll call vote. Jamie,
Yes.
Matt,
Yes.
Derek,
Yes.
Jason Sant,
Yes.
Brenda,
Yes.
Brant,
Yes.
and Nicole,
Yes.
and Leighton is an I as well. Okay, very good. Thank you. The next item, item 7 on our agenda, is a financial update. No, excuse me. I jumped item 6. Let's go back to item 6. Item 6 is a resolution 2207 proposing to approve a Fifth Amendment to the Interlocal Cooperative Service Agreement for services between UIA and Utopia. And Jason mentioned that in his financial presentation. This is the document that allows for the provision or payment of funds between Utopia and UIA, or UIA to Utopia, for the services they receive from the network. So, Jason, do you have anything additional you'd like to speak to regarding that? And
Yeah, I have something quick. It'll be less than 5 minutes if you're okay.
no, you're great. It's an
Okay.
important document. We understand it.
Let me just make sure I get the right one. Okay. This is the only slide I have, but this explains the difference in what we are approving. We are approving an increase in the amount of fee that will be charged to UIA from Utopia for services provided by Utopia, very specific services. Specifically network operations, provisioning, field maintenance, and electronic shelter maintenance. We're proposing a 10% increase in each of these fees, basically because cost for Utopia has gone up to provide these things. And it's pretty consistent with what we just did. It consistent with inflation is the amount that we proposed here. If you look over time, that amount that was charged by Utopia to UIA in 2021 was $3.4 million. In 2022, we estimated it'll be $4.5 million. And in 2023, we estimate it'll be $5.8 million. It's increasing and it's a per customer charge. That's what it is. So that's a detail of what's being approved here. Or being requested here, not approved.
Okay. Thank you, Jason. Are there any questions or concerns from any members of the board with regard to the proposed adjustment to this service contract, particularly with regard to the increase in the fees? Okay, hearing none, be happy to entertain a motion to approve Resolution 2207, which approves the Fifth Amendment to the Interlocal Cooperative Agreement for services between UIA and Utopia.
I'll make that motion. Jason
Okay,
Sam.
thank you, Jason. Is there a second?
I'll second that. It's Nicole.
Okay, thank you, Nicole. Let's just do, I think we can do a voice vote on that. All in favor, say aye.
I would probably suggest,
Nope.
I would suggest a roll call vote on that one.
Okay. Very good. Let's do a roll call vote. Nicole,
Yes.
Brand,
Yes.
Brenda,
Yes.
Jason Sant,
Yes.
Derek,
Yes.
Matt,
Yes.
Jamie.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Jamie, and Leighton is an aye as well.
Thank you, Alex.
Very good. You bet. Thank you, Krista. Next item is a financial update regarding UIA, and Jason will present that.
Yeah, this is the financial update updated through May, through the end of May. If I can get it to share. Oh, I don't want that. That's the one I want. All right. There we go. I've updated the format of this just a little bit, and it's something I'm still working on, but it's kind of what I've done here is I've tried to show a period ended May, the end of May 2021 versus the end of May 2022. That's what's in the left hand, those three columns on the left hand side. Then I've showed the projected year end for 2022 versus the budget for 2022. We've already discussed it. We've already discussed a little bit of this going through the 2023 budget. All of this information was shown in a little bit more detail on the 2023 budget presentation that we saw. If we look at year over year, you can see residential and business and fiber lease revenue all have grown fairly, they've grown fairly well. If you look at projected versus budgeted year end, we also see growth in the residential transport and business transport revenue. There is a difference in the fiber lease revenue. The fiber lease revenue, that's the $30 fee. We are going to be a little bit below budget there. I think we had some issues budgeting for queues that happened many years ago, which there were some in UIA. Some of those queues are falling off after 10 years of being issued. And this has caused a reduction of revenue coming in. You're going to see this in both UIA and Utopia are seeing this reduction. So that's why fiber lease revenue isn't necessarily tracking with residential transport revenue. Install revenue is also down just a little bit, but that's partly because some installs, if you look, some installs are very, very expensive and some are cheaper. And we kind of have to take a guess there. We just timing of installs this year, we're projecting they're going to be a little bit, the revenues from those are going to be a little bit less than budget. We are projecting that marketing expenses will be higher than we're budgeted for the year, or will be, excuse me, lower than what's budgeted for the year. The marketing expenses will be. The distribution to UIA and Utopia cities will be higher, and network operation expenses will be higher, as we've discussed in the budget presentation for the year-end budget revision. And that's basically what I have here. If you'll notice, there is projected a large amount of operating revenue still after the expenses for the year. One thing that is not shown on this chart is capital. And I don't have the capital broke out yet, but we have been using a portion of operating revenue going to UIA to fund capital expenditures. And it's definitely one of my goals to make that more visible to the board in the future. It's just not something I figured out how to pull out of the system yet very quickly. So that is one of my goals to make visible for next year. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Jason. Jason, are you aware of, or maybe Roger could chime in as well if need be? As Kim's not on with us this morning.
Who? Kim?
Kim.
Kim?
Yeah, I thought she would be. She's at this conference, and she was on some of the panels, so she might have got pulled into that.
Okay, I was just wondering, other than, and I assume I know the answer, but usually when I do that, I get in trouble. But from Jason, what you said, it seems like there's a few of these minor aberrations that are due to timing and a little bit of unpredictability. But do you know, Jason or Roger, do we see anything on the horizon with changes in the industry or changes in technology or changes in business models or et cetera, that may in any way significantly adjust or modify or reduce the trends that we've been experiencing, which is upward and very positive? Is there anything out there externally or even internally that they put these good results at some risk going forward? If that makes sense, the way I've tried to describe that.
Yeah, I think all the trends that I've seen have been in our favor. The technology trends have been in our favor as we see more and more devices and technologies coming out. It's becoming more common to see consumer grade devices that require more bandwidth. The quantity of devices in the home continues to grow. We're seeing more consumer devices that actually support 10 gigs. So we're actually seeing more, uptick in that, ultra high end tier. And obviously, it's been a big trend to see more of our new customers are opting for the gig service as compared to the lower cost 250 meg. Just on their own doing, they're choosing that tier, and that's more revenue for us, but also bodes well that that's where demand is headed, is into those higher tiers. As far as competitive pressures, we're not really seeing anything in our cities that's making a real impact. We've seen providers, such as CenturyLink and Comcast make announcements and do some upgrades here and there. People are concerned if we see CenturyLink building fiber in the same neighborhoods as us, we still do well and offer them a superior service. They're still deploying GPON. Our active networks are superior to those. That's helped us to keep a competitive advantage, and just simply not being the incumbent provider. People prefer their local providers and the choice they have on Utopia. So even in what we've seen to appear to be competitive, we're still doing better than we ever have. We even in cities that have been built out or neighborhoods that have been built out for many, many years, we are not losing customers. We are growing customers in all areas, in all cities. So that definitely bodes well for us. And then the other side of that is, might we see some competition come in the future? The costs of everything have gone up. It does make it a little bit hard to do the new city partnerships and model those under the same prices that we've had, but it does help on the competitive side. The fact that we have, we financed most of these projects under a much more favorable interest rate environment than what we're seeing now, and a cost structure that was better than what we're seeing now, means that those competitors would have to spend a lot more money today and in the future to come into these cities that we've already built at a much lower cost. we don't anticipate raising our costs for our cities. And so these trends are very good for us to be able to maintain our competitive advantage, our price structures. And I really, I think it's fair to ask that question. Like there could be some very difficult things we face. And I look around and I'm like, I can't see any reason why we wouldn't expect to be successful and increasingly successful from a competitive perspective. So that's my opinion.
Okay. One follow-up to that briefly is, based on the inflationary pressures on materials and supplies and those kinds of things, not necessarily, you touched on that impact with regard to capital construction, but just in terms of our ongoing operations, the thing that Jeff and Aaron and those guys are doing and the day-to-day things, do we see that those inflationary pressures are going to have any significant impact on our expenses?
They do impact us. We kind of have two things working in different directions. One of them is that we get a better economy of scale as we add customers, but then our per customer cost would go up as staffing costs go up, materials, our contractor rates for different things, utilities, all of that's going up. And so I wouldn't say that forever we're going to be able to maintain the same price structure. But we are actually, as you look at our financials, it's like, well, we're doing better this year than we were last year. So as those two things, our economy of scale improves and our cost per customer go up, the economy of scale and our revenues have outpaced that. So we're actually better today than we were last year. And if we can continue to maintain that momentum of growth, that's definitely a better situation to be in than having to raise our prices to make up for it. But again, I just asterisk that and say it's possible in the future that we'll have to do that. Maybe we do some of both, right? Grow our customer base and our revenues while also, small incremental increases in the service costs. But we're not proposing that. And if things continue the way they are now, we wouldn't need to. So we like the idea of maintaining a low price structure for our customers and our cities. And so as long as we can do that and also meet our other goals of the growth expansion, increasingly addressing the debt obligations, and I think we're kind of balancing a lot of priorities. But that's, what we've proposed is a budget based on that and not an increase of any of our fees. And I think that's a really good place to be, especially facing those inflationary pressures and cost increases.
Hey, Roger, if I could add, I'd agree with everything Roger said operationally. We're thinking that the economies of scale will make our prices be able to stay the same. The one concern, and I think Roger would agree with me, we do have is new city partnerships, kind of some of the changes in what we've seen in the market for financing and cost of construction that could affect how we go forward with new city partnerships and the affordability of the model that we're currently in. Would you agree with that, Roger?
Yeah, so we've had discussions with some cities that are considering partnering with us, and I think it's very likely that where we've done a $30 fee for the infrastructure side of things, which essentially covers the capital cost of building network and the financing cost, it's very likely that we'll have to basically draw a line and say that new partnership project is either going to have a much higher take rate requirement that's guaranteed by the city, or require some sort of subsidy, or have a higher price point. There's a couple of things that they could opt for that. But I wouldn't be surprised if we end up with if a city project came in and we said, this works very well, it's just going to have to be $40 instead of a $30 infrastructure fee. And we'll have to manage that from a marketing and messaging perspective. But the reality is $40 today is what $30 was only, a few years ago. And so it's not that we're trying to gouge them or make them pay unfairly for coming in at that phase. That's simply just what the costs have become, both on the materials, but I mean, the cost to finance these things has gotten far more expensive. That said, these projects still look very good. If we were to go in there with a $10 higher price point, well, customers are already voluntarily signing up for a price point that's something like $12 to $15 higher as they opt for that gigabit service. So the competitive pressures of our pricing versus the other options, I think, does allow headroom for a higher price point if that's what's required to make a project work. That said, we're not planning to go and retroactively apply a higher price point to any of our existing cities. I think, all the original cities and even the existing partner cities would benefit from what the cost structures have been historically and the financing rates that have been in the past, without negatively impacting them for future partnership projects. I mean, it's nice from a marketing perspective to keep it all the same, but it would be unfair to the original cities or previous partnerships to impose a higher fee simply to make future projects pencil. It makes more sense to basically say this phase of $30 infrastructure fee, modeled networks is ending, and now the next phase of $35 or $40 phase is coming in for cities that join now, simply because that's where we're at from a cost and interest expense perspective.
Okay, thank you, Roger and Jason. Any questions, other questions from the board regarding the financial update? Okay, very good. Thank you. A good discussion. The next item is a update on the UIA network. Roger, do you have anything to share there?
Yeah, there's a lot of exciting things happening. I'm going to share a couple things here real quickly. If I can find the right window. Too many windows open on my computer. So just real quick on subscribers, we continue to see strong subscriber growth. The last report we ran was just over 47,000 subscribers. So 47,168. That was at the end of the month, beginning of June. We're net growing at about 500 to 600 customers a month. So we're keeping our fingers crossed here that we might cross that 50,000 subscriber threshold, near the end of the year, maybe a little bit before. So let's, completely meaningless from a, 50,000 versus 48,000 or something like that, but kind of an exciting milestone just to see that number coming up on the horizon. A couple things that are exciting. I don't have that represented in this chart here yet, but we do actually have Pleasant Grove now with customers coming onto the system. So that's exciting to have a new city and new growth coming in there. We'll shortly have Syracuse coming online with some of their footprints. Construction has been issued to our contractors for work in Santa Clara. And so we actually have a meeting with the city to really just get that push in there. They have the permits in hand. So we're hoping those get approved shortly so that the construction ramps up quickly across that city. Some work has already been done, but basically the build out of all the residential areas, down the street to the homes is going to be taking place very soon. Same thing in Cedar Hills. We're maybe just a couple of weeks behind in the process with Cedar Hills. But very excited about that. It'll be nice because it'll migrate right nicely over from Pleasant Grove into that city. So we'll see those coming online. We did have an announcement recently about the completion of West Valley City. That just got picked up. Let's see, I'm going to come over here. So that got picked up by the Salt Lake Tribune. So we had an article on that this morning. This was issued out announcing that West Valley City is the second largest in the U.S. to be fully connected to fiber. So where there's a lot of cities that have some fiber or some option here, rarely do you have a ubiquitous system covering the whole city. Obviously, that's something we do with Utopia. Layton is covered. Many of our cities are already covered, but West Valley City, being its size, makes it second to just Chattanooga. So that was exciting to see some press on that. Another thing that hit recently, this was a couple of months ago, was actually a report from PC Magazine that ranked the cities for best work from home cities, basically a combination of demographics and housing, but also broadband was a big part of that. And we go to some of these conferences, I think broadband communities recently, where I think it was Longmont was very proud of their, top 10 ranking. It was part of their keynote and all this, attention about how they were one of the top cities for remote work or work from home. And I'm sitting here thinking, well, number one nationally on that list is Layton, Utah. So, and all the reasons that Layton got on that, obviously from a broadband perspective, applied to our other city projects. So that was some exciting press that we've seen out there. And we expect to see more of that. We have a couple other completions. We did just complete Murray City. When I say complete, there's still a couple of MDU or not MDUs, HOAs that have not allowed us to come in. But anywhere where we have been allowed to come in, we have wrapped that up. And so we haven't done a press release on that yet, but we're excited to have one more city finished. And then really we only have Orem left at that point, and we're very close. We were hoping to be done about now. We had a couple little holdups there, so we're probably a couple months out from that final footprint in Orem, and that's exciting to get them wrapped up as well. And with that, we will be done with the original Utopia cities. We are never really done because we keep building new homes and expanding, and there's opportunities for getting into those HOAs, and so we're all continuously growing and expanding, and that's all good. But finally, saying, hey, we're done. We've been at this for, we've all been at this for a very long time, getting these cities built. And so that's an exciting milestone to finally be done. But we're also excited for all the various partnerships that are in place. If you look at our charts, you'll see Idaho Falls actually growing faster than any other city from a subscriber basis. That we don't own that network, but in the partnership relationship, we do get revenue from those customers. It's been a good thing for Utopia. Now we do count them as our subscribers on a system, and we can expect to have additional UIA partnerships, also potential Utopia operating relationships. We'll continue to extend the reach of the network and benefit the communities we work with, while also improving our financial situation and offsetting the debt burden. And there's a lot of exciting things going on. It's a little difficult keeping up with all of it. We're all very, very busy at Utopia. I think Jason is probably suffering from a little bit of that right now, coming into how much stuff we're working on, but it's good. It's all, it's a good problem to have, is to be busy and to see this success of growth and revenues. So that's what I have for the report. All the charts are going up. I guess that's the summary. All the good charts.
Thank you, Roger. Are there any questions or comments from board members with regard to the update? I couldn't help but think, Roger, as you were talking about all the economic successes that we've had, that perhaps the biggest thing that we've achieved is to, if this makes sense, but is the blessing that Utopia has been to the people of the state of Utah in the various communities. That includes, Fortune 100 companies that use the network to increase their margins and build their profits. But also to the single moms with young children in West Valley City or Layton or other places that have had access during the pandemic to technology that allows their kids to still be connected to school and in some kind of productive way. I mean, I don't think any of us have, we see the economic and organizational side of it, but I don't think we have probably any idea of the kind of the personal community benefit that it is in the lives of individual people in all the varied circumstances they find themselves in. I don't know if that makes sense. We can't quantify that, but I know in Layton, and I suspect each of you would say in your own communities, as you hear from people about how important this is to them, that we've not only realized the vision of building infrastructure. I think for those of us who have been involved in this from day one, through all the thick and thin and the fits and starts and fights and so forth, that was the vision, is that this was infrastructure that was essential, not to make money, but to benefit and strengthen the communities. And it's gratifying they were doing well financially, but even more gratifying that we realized that part of the vision and can continue to do that. So I don't want to be sappy about that, but I think that's really the genius of this and why through the years there's been so much stubbornness and commitment to this project when, from a business perspective, there are people who lectured us and said you should let it go, let it die, and you'll be better off. And of course they didn't know what they were talking about. But anyway, again, that's just a credit to each one of you and your communities. I would also say, if there are issues, offer from UIA's perspective, if there are issues in your communities, ways that we can expand the network, we can improve the reputation. If there's concerns that you have about anything UIA is doing, feel free to voice those. We're all in this together. We're all family. You could certainly voice them, Roger, to you. I hope that's okay. And if not, you could voice them to me and I'd be happy to pass them on to Roger. We want everybody to be, to be lifted by this and to feel good about the experience. And if there's something UIA can do to adjust and accommodate, I think we'd be happy to do that. The days of discord and discontent and differences hopefully are past. And now we're just moving forward together and celebrating the success. So anyway, that's a long-winded thank you to each of you for what you've meant to the organization. So I'd also, last thing I promise is just to express appreciation to the staff. I see Jeff on here and Aaron. I don't see your picture, but it's good to have you on board, and Krista, and even Kim showed up. Kim, you showed up to be congratulated. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good timing.
I know when to make my grand ender.
Yeah, it's good to have you. Thank you for all the work you're doing. Did I miss anybody that's on from Utopia staff? Yeah, we appreciate all the Utopia staff from bottom to top and side to side and all the different departments everybody has a role and they all do exceptionally well. Also want to acknowledge Mr. Waite from Santa Clara that's joining with us today, and we appreciate that partnership down south, and that's going to be a great project. So anyway, I'll be quiet. Is there anything else that needs to be brought before the board? If not, thank you, and we'll accept a motion to adjourn, and hopefully you'll each have a good day.
So
Motion
moved.
to adjourn.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, have a great day and be safe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Al.